Hello, hi, and welcome to another episode of The Emma Gunn Show and a midweek instalment of Bullet Points. That's actually more of an end of the week instalment of Bullet Points because this week has been crazy. It has been a busy, busy old week. The life of a freelancer is that sometimes things come up and you just have to make the schedule work. And in and amongst all of that, I've also been really busy with events. And so the things that I normally have very set times for, like making the podcast, writing my Substack, they've just been pushed and tweaked and pushed and pushed and pushed. And so this is 2 days later than I would have liked to have published it, or a day later than I would have liked to have published it. But in a way, I think that might actually, bizarrely in this instance, be quite a good thing, because my busy day was Wednesday this week, and I went to several appointments, several meetings, a couple of launches, and the end of the evening, it was a really nice evening. It was a really nice day that ended with dinner with Sally Hughes and Nadine Baggett and the team over at Number 7 and Boots. I had such a lovely evening. It was such a really, really nice, just intimate dinner, just catching up and talking about all things, what have you. But on the way home, I suddenly had that feeling of, gosh, I've seen so many people today. I've had so many conversations today. And I remember I used to have this a lot when I was doing a lot of interviews, a lot of podcasting, that I would get to the weekend and I'd think about something and I would think, who told me that? Or where did I hear that? Or who was I having that conversation with? And it took me a while to kind of piece everything together based on the patchwork of conversations I'd had throughout that week anyway. The same was true. I was thinking, gosh, I know that for the next few days, I'm going to think, who was I talking about? Who was I chatting to that about? Or who was I doing this about? Anyway, it has been a really exciting week. And just to say, on that Wednesday, my first appointment, I'm really sad actually, because I was supposed to go to something in the morning and I knew I just couldn't make it work and then do everything else that I needed to do in the day. So in order to give myself some grace in the morning and get some work done, I didn't go to a morning event. I was really disappointed because Ruth Crilly was there. So I missed seeing Ruth Crilly this week, which is rather disappointing because I don't get to see her very often. But I sat next to Ree at a lunch for an amazing new sun care brand called Le Rub. And also next to me on the other side was my lovely friend Katie Young, who's the beauty director of Harper's, Elle, various titles over at Hearst, and I've known her for a really long time. And who else? Lisa Potter Dixon was there. There was a really nice crew, and then a load of us went over to another event, which happened very spontaneously. I was going west anyway. And then the guys from Space NK, Ginny from Space NK was there. He said, do you want to come there's something happening at the Duke of York Square store. Do you want to come along? Sam Chapman's there. And I thought, well, A, always yes to Sam Chapman, but B, how funny that I'm wearing Sam Chapman's mascara today for the first time. So get to show her what her mascara looks like on me, although I'm sure she's seen it on many people by now. But there was a nice little crew of us that went over, and I discovered Kulfi. I hadn't ever used any of the Kulfi beauty products. So I got to meet the founder, try the products, watch the products, which was really nice fun. Then I had to run back over to central London to do a couple of appointments, pick something up, and then go over to my final whatever. But it was a busy day and it was great. And actually one of the things that kept coming up, because it had aired on television the night before, was the Bonnie Blue documentary. And I was really reluctant to express any thoughts about Bonnie Blue, the phenomenon, not the person, but the phenomenon that is, or the cultural whatever that it is, because I just don't know as if my voice really adds something. And I was talking to Lisa Potter Dixon and she said, well, first of all, like I hadn't thought about that. Like, you should talk about it. So essentially, if you aren't aware, and I'm glad I'm not writing this for a Substack because I think this works better as like a train of thought. But I watched the documentary on Tuesday evening. It was a Channel 4 documentary that was an hour and a half or an hour and 25 minutes following Bonnie Blue. And Bonnie Blue has become famous specifically on OnlyFans as a platform for pornography. And she has entered the mainstream, which doesn't happen very often, for these sort of stunts that she pulls, or a particular type of porn that she does, which is essentially inviting members of the public to come and participate. They don't get paid. they just have to agree to be filmed, although they can wear balaclavas so that they are not identifiable, so that she can then publish it on her OnlyFans. And one of the figures that they stated in the documentary was that she was making over £1 million a month from her OnlyFans, from her subscribers, from people watching this content. But then there were these issues, and that I think the company that processes the payments for OnlyFans was uncomfortable, and so put some restrictions in place. And now but that's kind of that. Whether she's on a platform that we are familiar with or unfamiliar with is sort of beside the point. I was fascinated by it because I think it has. The Bonnie Blue phenomenon has elicited such a strong reaction, specifically from women. When I am out and I speak to women, the horror, the abject sort of, the sharp intake of breath before anybody says a word about it is really obvious. I think people have very strong emotions. Nobody is ambivalent. Nobody who's heard of Bonnie Blue is indifferent and thinks it does nothing to do with me. Everybody has quite a visceral reaction, and which I find really quite interesting. But the thing I find really interesting is that she has gone mainstream, in the fact that I could probably mention Bonnie Blue in pretty much any social situation, and I think the majority of people would know who I was talking about, which means that she has reached critical mass and she is in the mainstream. And I think evidenced by the fact that she was on the cover of the Saturday Times magazine last week. And I come from a family of Times readers. Those supplements have been in my house every weekend when I was growing up. Like, they are iconic. And I was kind of, when I saw it on social media, the editor Nicola Gill put it on her Instagram, and I was sort of wrong-footed. I was like, oh my God. And I thought, I have two feelings at exactly the same time. The first is, oh my gosh, I can't believe this person is on the cover of such an incredible magazine. Secondly, but thank God it's that magazine that's doing it. Because if you're going to do it properly, do it right, do it responsibly, do it brilliantly. They had a fantastic journalist called Janice Turner who did the interview, wrote the piece, and it was really phenomenal. But what I was really interested in is this idea of somebody catching fire, of somebody gaining so much interest from the public that they are not niche, they are not, they're not happening over there in the shadows. It happens every now and again. It doesn't happen very often that you see somebody just go from 0 to 100. And I was thinking, just not even without even joining the dots, I was thinking, gosh, the only other person I can think of that's really happened to recently is the nutritionist Emily English, who has been on this podcast, who is brilliant. I know her. She's highly qualified. She's a brilliant content creator. And then I realized, but there were some parallels between the aesthetic, the way that Bonnie Blue and Emily look. Petite, white, blue-eyed, blonde women, not overtly sexual women. And I thought, that's really interesting. I wonder if that's kind of, I remember a friend of mine, Ate, who has also been on this podcast, we were actually in a meeting with Emily, and we were talking about, like, you've won the genetic lottery because you're this, and this, you're blonde, thin, beautiful, etc. And I remember at the time thinking, God, that's quite a bold thing to say to somebody. And then in sort of many years later, I thought, God, there might be something in that, just kind of like, if you can tick all of these certain boxes and you've got talent, and you've got you're able to market yourself, or you're able to catch people's attention in a certain way, then really you can go off. Like someone like Pamela Anderson back in the 90s, when she really again caught fire, should have been on the outskirts, like the big pneumatic boobs and everything. She should have been, but there was something sweet, accessible. Yes, she had breast implants that were very obviously breast implants, and she kind of led from there. But there was something really girl next door about her, and I was thinking, it's this girl next door thing. And then I thought, well, if Bonnie Blue, say I was Bonnie Blue, a mixed race woman, 25 years ago, admittedly, with weight problems, I wouldn't have caught fire. And then I started thinking, would Bonnie Blue have caught fire if Bonnie Blue had been a black woman, or if Bonnie Blue had been another mixed race woman, or an Asian woman, or how? And I just suddenly began to think about all of these things and thought, there's something in this, at the same time as a lot of people are having conversations about the fact that the world has gone from being inclusive and diverse to being very narrow again. And my friend Jules Von Hepp has been talking about this on his social media stories about how brands have stopped being inclusive. It's gone back to being young, pert, very white representation in beauty, which 5-6 years ago was leading the way when it came to being inclusive, being diverse. And so I just had to, and again, as you can hear, formulating my thoughts, thinking this through, I just had to wonder if there is anything in all of those things, the fact that there's, particularly with Bonnie, I think, because I can't speak for the other people, I think all of the other people, like I sort of hate drawing that parallel with Emily, because I wouldn't want it to appear as though I'm putting them in the same anything at all, other than the thing that they both have in common is that they have found a huge audience in a relatively short space of time recently. Not short, I mean, Emily's worked really, really hard. But I was just fascinated by the documentary and by the fact that this person has brought a certain type of media, a certain type of pornography into the mainstream, which obviously I don't think it's a particularly good thing. But whether I'm horrified or not by what she does is completely, it's by the by. The thing that she has really gained fame for is this, she slept with over 1,000 men in a day. And I was saying to my friends over a cocktail the other lunchtime, I was like, I'm funny about who sits next to me on public transport, let alone just like a free-for-all. I personally cannot possibly put myself into the mind of someone who would do that, because we are just not programmed in the same way. And I don't want to be programmed in that way. But I think what was interesting about the documentary is they sort of, not that it actually drew any real conclusion. I'm not really sure what the point of it was, other than to sort of shed more light on the situation, allow you to see more. But they were clearly, I think, assuming that she was damaged, that there was trauma, that there's something that's fundamentally broken that is causing her to do this. And I'm not sure how they probed her in order to be able to sort of get that to show. I don't feel that that's what happened. I think actually what they seem to demonstrate is that there is no trauma, there's no damage, there's nothing broken of her to be doing these things. It is something that she has realised she can market. And even her own mother on the documentary says, when you're making £1 million a month, you'd all get your bits out. And I don't know. I don't know as if I'd enjoy spending that money. But that's very judgmental. That's not the point of this. I just sort of think it's very interesting culturally. What catches fire? Who really gets people's attention? Who suddenly becomes... who suddenly people want to know about across the board. The fact that Bonnie has been on This Morning, the fact that she's done a lot of quite mainstream media. Considering what she does, really, it should only be the people who subscribe to her who know who she is. But she's done something, and whether it's clever, whether it's genius, which is what they seem to really want to hammer home in that documentary, is this idea that she's a genius. It's really clever. Actually, what she's doing is she's being really, really smart. I don't know. I would love to see a documentary where she actually spoke to psychologists, where she, where it was broken down a lot more and it wasn't just observational. And I think she'd probably subject herself to that, to be honest. I think she would be game, because as they pointed out, and as is true, she's very articulate. The girl can write a headline. I'm telling you that now. She's very good at sound bites. Like, she does have a very good marketing, swift, quick brain. But it's just, I find it really interesting. And it's not that I want to defend Bonnie Blue, but I think that there's more to it than just looking at what she does, looking at the top line information about what she does, and then talking about all of the ways in which she's an awful, horrible, degrading person. Because I think there's more to this. The bigger picture is like, why this? Why her? Why now? What is it? Is this the culmination of social media? Is this something that would have only happened with social media? Like, why? And I just thought there's so much more to unpack than just trying to understand why she would sleep with that many men. That seems to be like the final question. Anyway, I'll put the link to the interview in the Times with Janice Turner, because it really was extraordinary, and I thought it was really interesting. And also I thought that the pictures really hammered home that idea that she is this girl next door. She's not an overly sexual bodied woman. And I was saying to someone the other day that back in the 70s when Sonny and Cher show Cher used to wear really revealing Bob Mackie outfits, but because she didn't have an overtly sexual body like someone like, say, Raquel Welch of the same era, none of it looked titillating. It was all like, oh wow, look at that beautiful dress. And the fact that her body was in it was almost secondary in this weird way. I feel like Bonnie's got some of that going on too. She's not an overtly sexual, pneumatic, stereotypical bombshell porn star blonde that I think all of us can sort of conjure in our mind. There's something about her, whether it's the girl next doorness, the fact that she's got glowing skin. I mean, I would like to know her secret, although I think I've read what she says it is, and I don't want any part of that. I mean, it took me years to put snail slime on my face, so I mean, I'll stop that thought there. But there's something so interesting about the fact that what she does doesn't match the image, and I'm wondering whether that's it. And I'm wondering whether the fact that what she does doesn't match the image, and the image is so sort of pure girl next door. She's very tiny as well. She's petite. I wonder if that's all kind of messed up, and I really need to speak to a psychologist about this. I'm like, why do you think people, whether it's men, women of all ages, are curious enough about this to watch, whether it's an Instagram reel or a TikTok, or whether it's to watch that documentary? Like, what is it? What is the magic? What is going on here that for some reason makes people go, huh? Because I have to say, even when I was watching the documentary, even after I'd seen clips, albeit edited, of her doing her various things, when she's speaking to the camera and she's saying things that are quite, well, I would say lewd and a bit gross, there's something about it that it just like, it does, that the sound doesn't match the picture. What? And it makes me look even harder. And I think that's what I find really fascinating about this whole circumstance. And you can see I was out all day Wednesday, and it was a conversation that came up at every meeting. And I wasn't always the one to bring it up, I hasten to add, I think because it had been on the night before. But if you have thoughts about this, I would be so interested to know what you think. If you have only just learned about this whole thing from the show, then I apologise. Read the article that I'll link to in the show notes, because that will put it into far better context than I ever could. But yes, I'm fascinated by the idea that this now has caught so much attention. And I wonder what the next thing will be. Anyway, those are my thoughts out loud for this week. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for subscribing. I will see you on the next one.